The jungle was alive with strange sounds. The human stumbled through the thick glowing plants, his breath heavy, his body tired. He had been alone on this alien world for days, ever since his ship had crashed into the endless green. Every step he took felt like a gamble, not knowing what creature might be watching him. Then, suddenly he saw movement ahead. Figures stepped out of the mist, tall and elegant, their skin faintly glowing under the pale light. Their eyes were large, almost too large, reflecting the jungle's colors like mirrors. The human froze, not knowing if they were friend or predator. One of them raised a hand. It was a gesture he understood, a sign of peace. The voice that followed was soft, melodic, almost like music. "You are the one who fell from the sky," the alien said. He nodded slowly. Still unsure if speaking would be safe, the alien stepped closer, her long fingers brushing against the air as if tasting his presence. "The queen has called for you," she whispered. Before he could react, they surrounded him. Their movements were silent, graceful, and he felt a strange pull as they guided him deeper into the jungle. The trees gave way to a glowing pathway made of crystal-like stones. In the distance, a massive structure rose from the ground, shimmering like liquid silver. His heart pounded. He had seen many worlds before, but nothing like this. The palace looked alive, its walls pulsing with soft light, as if it was breathing. The aliens walked him through towering gates that opened with a low hum. Inside, the air was warm and filled with a sweet scent. The room stretched endlessly, lined with strange banners and glowing symbols. At the center was a long table covered with food unlike anything he had ever seen. Fruits that seemed to glow, meats that shifted colors, drinks that swirled with light. One of the aliens gently pushed him forward. "The queen awaits," she said, her voice almost trembling. He walked slowly, every step echoing in the massive hall. At the far end, seated on a throne of silver and blue light, was the queen. She was unlike the others. Her presence filled the room. Her skin shimmered like starlight, and her eyes held a weight that made him feel small. When she spoke, the sound was both soft and commanding. "Human," she said, "you have been chosen." The words hit him like a wave. He opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but no sound came out. The queen stood, her long flowing robe trailing behind her like liquid shadow. She raised a hand and the entire hall fell silent. "Tonight," she continued, "we celebrate the coming of a new bond." The aliens around the table bowed their heads. The human looked around nervously, not understanding. He had been starving and desperate a few hours ago, and now he was standing in a royal hall, being told he was chosen for something he didn't even know. The queen smiled, and it was both kind and unsettling. "You will dine with us, you will share in our feast," she said. Her eyes locked onto his, and a shiver ran down his spine. He sat down slowly as they gestured to a seat at the center of the table. The aliens filled his plate with glowing fruits and steaming dishes. He took a cautious bite, and warmth spread through his body like fire. The music began, soft at first. Then rising, strange instruments played deep, echoing notes that seemed to vibrate inside his chest. The aliens laughed and danced, their movements flowing like water. For a brief moment, he almost forgot his fear. Then the queen raised her hand. The music stopped. The laughter died. She stood tall, her voice carrying across the hall. "Tonight," she said, "our guest will complete the ancient ritual." The human froze. His fork hovered in the air. "Ritual? What ritual?" The queen turned to the far end of the hall and spoke words he did not understand. A door opened slowly, glowing with soft blue light. From the shadows, 3 figures stepped out, their forms graceful and their eyes locked on him. Whispers spread through the room as the queen's lips curved into a knowing smile. "The daughters are ready," she said softly, and every pair of alien eyes in the hall turned to stare at him. His breath caught in his throat. He realized then that this feast was not just about food. It was about him, and whatever this ritual was, he was at the very center of it. The queen's voice cut through the silence one last time. "Human," she said. "Tonight, you will become part of us." And in that moment, the hall felt smaller, the air heavier, and the human knew his life was about to change forever. Asterisk. The human's chest tightened as the glowing door closed behind him, sealing him in a smaller chamber. The hall's noise faded into silence, leaving only the soft hum of the living walls. The room was circular, covered in shifting runes that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. He turned around, searching for an exit, but the only path was forward. At the center stood the queen, her eyes brighter now, her presence filling every corner. The three alien daughters stood behind her, their gazes fixed on him like predators studying prey. But there was no hunger in their eyes, only something deeper, something ancient. The queen raised a hand, and the air itself seemed to still. "Human," she said softly, "you do not yet understand why you are here." His voice finally broke free, rough and uncertain. "What is this place? Why me?" The queen stepped closer, her robes flowing like liquid starlight. "For centuries," she began, "our bloodline has faded. Our people have waited for a spark to awaken the bond." Her fingers brushed the glowing runes, and the walls shifted, showing visions of her people generations fading into shadows. "Our survival depends on a connection that exists only with your kind," she said, her voice almost a whisper. The human shook his head slowly. "I'm not. I don't understand. I'm just a man." The queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "That is exactly why you are perfect." The three daughters stepped forward, their movements silent and graceful. Each one was different, the first with silver hair that shimmered like frost, the second with eyes like molten gold, the third with skin that glowed faintly like the moon. They circled him slowly, studying him. The youngest reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand. A spark of energy shot through him, warm and electric. He gasped and stepped back, but the walls pulsed in response, as if the room itself had felt the touch. The queen's voice carried a weight that made his heart pound. "You were not brought here by accident," she said. "The sky chose you, as it has chosen before." He wanted to deny it, to say he was just a survivor of a crash, nothing more, but deep inside, something told him this was not chance. The queen raised both hands, and the runes flared to life. A low hum filled the air, and the daughters stood on either side of him. "This is the bonding chamber," the queen said, "where the line of queens is preserved, where our future is born." His breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him. This ritual. "It's not just a feast," he whispered. The queen's eyes locked on his. "No, human, it is the beginning of life." He stepped back, his mind racing. "You want me to..." The queen tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "To join with them," she said softly. "To give them the spark your kind carries within." The youngest daughter stepped closer again, her hand touching his chest gently. A soft glow spread from her fingertips, sinking into his skin like light through water. His pulse quickened as warmth spread through his body, a strange mixture of fear and something else he couldn't name. He wanted to run, but the walls seemed to hum with every heartbeat. The queen stepped forward, her voice calm yet commanding. "There is no running, human. The bond has already begun." He looked at the daughters, their luminous eyes reflecting him like mirrors. For a moment, the fear faded, replaced by something heavier, a strange sense of purpose. The queen's words were soft but final. "You are not a guest in our feast, human," she said. "You are the key to our survival." The youngest daughter smiled faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And now you belong to us." The air shifted, and the walls pulsed brighter. The human stood frozen as the energy wrapped around him like invisible threads. For the first time, he realized he was not just a visitor on this world. He was part of something far bigger, something he could not escape. The queen stepped back into the soft glow, her final words echoing in the chamber. "Prepare yourself, human," she said, "for the bond is only beginning." And as the room fell into silence, he understood. Whatever life he had before was gone. The ritual had chosen him, and there was no turning back. The chamber doors slid open with a soft hum, and the human stepped into a vast underground hall. The air was cool and heavy, carrying the faint scent of stone and something ancient. Blue light seeped from cracks in the walls, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. The queen's voice echoed behind him, calm yet commanding. "To join with my daughters, you must first prove you are worthy." He turned back, his voice shaking. "Worthy? I didn't ask for any of this." The queen's eyes glimmered, neither angry nor forgiving. "No one asks," she said. "The bond chooses." The three daughters stepped beside him, their expressions unreadable. The eldest carried a staff of crystal. The second held nothing, but her gaze felt sharper than any blade. The youngest simply watched him with curious, glowing eyes. Without a word, the floor beneath them shifted, lowering into the depths. When the movement stopped, they stood in a cavern that looked alive. The walls pulsed faintly like veins, and in the center lay a pool of shimmering liquid light. The eldest daughter stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. "This is the trial of the heart." He swallowed hard. What do I have to do?" The second daughter's eyes locked on his. "You survive," she said simply. A deep rumble shook the chamber. From the shadows beyond the glowing pool, a shape moved. It was massive, its body coiling like a serpent, its skin reflecting the blue light in jagged patterns. The human's breath caught as a single golden eye opened in the darkness. He stumbled back. "What is that?" The youngest daughter touched his arm, her voice calm. "The guardian of the bond," she whispered. "If you run, you fail. If you fight, you die. If you protect, you live." Before he could ask what she meant, the creature lunged. A massive clawed limb swept across the cavern, and the youngest cried out as the shockwave knocked her to the ground. Instinct overrode fear. The human dove forward, pulling her close as the beast's second strike smashed into the stone where she had been. The eldest raised her staff, a shield of light flaring between them and the creature. The second daughter's eyes never left him, even as the cavern trembled. "You chose to shield her," she said softly, her voice carrying the strange reverence. The queen's voice echoed faintly from above, though she was nowhere in sight. "The bond does not choose the strongest or the bravest, but the one who protects." The creature circled them, its massive body scraping against the walls. The human held the youngest close, his heart pounding so loud he could barely hear himself. Breathe. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a hero, but in that moment, he knew he couldn't let her be hurt. The eldest lowered her staff, the shield fading. The beast paused, its golden eye fixed on the human. Slowly, it lowered its head until it hovered inches from him. He felt the heat of its breath, the weight of its gaze. The youngest pulled away slightly and touched the creature's snout with trembling fingers. The beast let out a low rumble, then turned and melted back into the shadows as if it had never been. The cavern fell silent. The youngest looked up at him, her glowing eyes wide. "You didn't think," she said softly. "You just protected me." His chest rose and fell with shaky breaths. I couldn't let you get hurt," he whispered. The eldest and second daughter stepped closer, their expressions no longer cold. The eldest placed her staff on the ground, her voice calm. "The trial is complete." The floor shifted again, rising. Back toward the upper chamber, the queen waited as they emerged, her eyes fixed on the human. When she spoke, her voice carried pride and finality. "You have proven your heart," she said, "and the bond has accepted you." The human shook, his head slightly, still catching his breath. "I didn't do anything. I just—" The queen stepped closer, placing a hand over his chest. "And that is why you are worthy," she said softly. "You protected without question, without gain. That is the core of the bond." The youngest daughter smiled faintly, her hand brushing his. For the first time, the human didn't feel like a stranger in the palace. For the first time, the fear faded just a little, but deep inside, a new weight settled in. Because if this was only the test, what would the bond itself demand of him next? Asterisk. The human stood in the center of the chamber, his heart still pounding from the trial below. The queen watched him in silence, her glowing eyes unreadable. The three daughters stood beside her now, no longer strangers but something more. The air itself felt different, heavier, as if the palace was holding its breath. The queen raised her hand, and the walls around them shifted. The runes glowed brighter, lines of light stretching from the floor to the ceiling like veins of energy. "This," she said softly, "is where the bond begins." The human took a step back. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. The queen's expression softened slightly, though her voice held the same weight as before. "Now," she said, "you choose to accept what has already begun." He looked at the daughters, their luminous eyes fixed on him. The eldest stepped forward first, her hand reaching out when her fingers brushed his. A surge of warmth shot through his arm. It wasn't pain, but it wasn't comfort either. It was connection, raw and undeniable. The second daughter followed, placing her hand over his other. Her touch was colder, sharper, and the two energies collided in his chest. He gasped, feeling the pulse of something ancient waking up inside him. The youngest stepped closer last, her glowing fingertips pressing gently against his heart. A soft light spread from her touch, wrapping around all of them like invisible threads. The walls pulsed brighter, the runes shifting as if alive. Queen's voice carried through the room, calm and commanding. "The bond is not just flesh, not just blood," she said. "It is the merging of spirit and purpose. Once complete, you will not be human alone, nor will they be only of their kind. Together, you will become something new." The human's breath came in shaky bursts. He wanted to speak, to ask if he had a choice, but the energy rushing through him made words impossible. It wasn't just their hands he felt, it was their thoughts, their emotions brushing against his own. For the briefest moment, he wasn't himself. He was them, all of them, and they were him. He stumbled slightly, and the youngest caught his arm. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper inside his mind. "Don't fight it," she said. "Just feel it." The eldest's voice followed, deep and steady. "The bond doesn't take who you are. It shows you what you can be." The second's voice was sharper, yet filled with something almost like affection. "And once it begins, there is no breaking it." The queen lowered her hands, the glow in the room reaching a blinding peak. The floor beneath them lit up with swirling patterns, wrapping around their feet like living vines. The human squeezed his eyes shut as the energy climbed his body, wrapping around his chest, his neck, his mind. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. The light dimmed to a soft pulse, and the connection settled deep inside him like a second heartbeat. He opened his eyes and saw the daughters standing close. Their faces calm, but their eyes different now. They weren't just looking at him. They were looking through him with him. The queen stepped forward, her voice low but powerful. "The bond is not complete," she said, "but it has begun. From this moment, you are no longer separate. Their lives are yours, and yours are theirs." The human staggered back slightly, the weight of her words pressing on him. He wanted to deny it, to say he wasn't ready, but deep down he knew it. Didn't matter. Something inside him had changed, something that couldn't be undone. The youngest touched his hand gently, her voice soft. "Do you feel it?" He swallowed, nodding slowly. "Yes. Like they're a part of me." The eldest stepped closer, her expression calm. "And you are a part of us," she said simply. The queen's gaze softened, though her voice still carried the weight of centuries. "Now you must decide if you will walk away or step fully into what you have begun." The human looked at the daughters, at the faint glow of their bond still swirling faintly around them. He didn't speak right away, but in his chest, the second heartbeat thudded louder, and he realized with a quiet shiver that he already knew the answer. The queen turned slowly, her final words lingering in the charged air. "Tonight, human, you choose not just for yourself, but for all of us." And as the daughters stepped closer, the light of the bond flaring softly between them. The human knew that whatever he chose now would change his life forever. The palace was quiet that night, but the human could feel something shifting in the air. The bond's faint glow still lingered on his skin, like a whisper he couldn't shake. Every step he took through the long corridors felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were watching. The daughters walked beside him in silence, their presence no longer strange but deeply familiar. He could feel their emotions brushing against his own through the bond: curiosity, calmness, and something else. But underneath that warmth was a faint edge of tension. They reached the grand hall, the same place where the feast had begun. Now it was empty, the long table cleared, the soft light dimmed to a pale blue. The queen stood at the far end, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp. "You have begun the bond," she said softly. "And that is why they will come." He frowned, his voice low. "Who will come?" Before the queen could answer, the great doors burst open with a deep metallic hum. A group of tall figures entered, their armor dark and their movements sharp. At their front was a warrior unlike the others, his eyes glowing red instead of blue. His voice cut through the hall like a blade. "You've gone too far, my queen." The daughters tensed, stepping closer to the human instinctively. He felt their fear pulse through the bond, and his own heart quickened. The queen's gaze hardened. "You dare enter the royal chamber unbidden?" The warrior's steps were slow but full of purpose. "The bond is forbidden with outsiders," he growled. "You risk the bloodline for a creature that is not of us." The human swallowed, his hands curling into fists. "Creature," the word stung. More than he expected, the eldest daughter stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "The bond chose him." "It is not the queen's will, it is destiny." The warrior's laugh was harsh. "Destiny? Or desperation?" His eyes locked on the human, sharp and accusing. "You don't belong here, human. You will destroy everything we are." Something inside the human flared. Maybe it was fear, maybe anger, or maybe the bond itself. He stepped forward despite the daughter's hands reaching to hold him back. "I didn't choose this," he said, his voice trembling but strong. "But I won't let you hurt them." The warrior's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise. Then his hand snapped up and energy crackled around his fingers. A beam of raw light shot toward the human like a spear, without thinking. The human threw himself in front of the daughters. The energy hit him square in the chest. He expected pain, fire, death, but instead, the bond flared, the light wrapping around him and the daughters like a shield. The force of it knocked the warrior back, the hall trembling under the blast. When the light faded, the human was still standing, his chest glowing. Faintly he looked down, breathless. I didn't die," he whispered. The queen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "No," she said softly. "You awakened." The warrior staggered to his feet, his red eyes wide. "This is impossible." The second daughter's voice cut through the stunned silence, sharp as glass. "No, this is the bond." The hall shifted as the other armored figures stepped back, uncertainty in their glowing eyes. The queen's voice rose, calm but carrying the weight of command. "You see now. He is chosen. The bond has accepted him. You cannot fight what the stars themselves have woven." The warrior's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking between the queen, the daughters, and the human. For a long moment, the hall held its breath. Then slowly, he lowered his hand and stepped back into the shadows. "This isn't over," he said softly, before vanishing through the great doors. The hall fell silent again, the only sound the faint hum of the bond still pulsing around the human. He sank to his knees, his chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. The youngest knelt beside him, her voice soft and trembling. "You protected us again." He looked at her, at all of them, and for the first time, the fear that had lived in his chest since the crash began to fade. "I don't know what I'm becoming," he whispered, "but I won't let anyone take you away." The queen stepped closer, her voice warm yet solemn. "You are no longer just human," she said. "You are ours, and we are yours." And now the stars themselves will see the bond as real. The human closed his eyes for a moment, the second heartbeat of the bond thudding deep inside him. He had come to this palace as a lost survivor. Now he realized he was something else entirely, and whatever war was brewing beyond these walls, he was at the center of it. Asterisk, the palace was quiet after the clash, yet the air still carried the weight of what had happened. The human sat in the grand hall, his hands trembling as he stared at the faint glow still pulsing beneath his skin. The daughters sat near him, silent, their eyes filled with emotions he could feel through the bond: fear, relief, and something warmer beneath it all. The queen stepped down from her throne, her step soft but heavy with meaning. "The bond has awakened fully," she said, her voice calm yet unshakable. The human looked up at her, his voice low. "What does that mean? What happens to me now?" The queen's gaze softened slightly. "It means," she said, "you are no longer a guest here. You stand at the crossroads of two worlds." The words sank into him like stone into water. A crossroads. He thought of Earth, of the life he had before the crash, of the people he might never see again. And then he looked at the daughters, at the bond glowing softly between them, and his chest tightened. The eldest daughter broke the silence, her voice calm but steady. "You can choose to leave. The bond will fade slowly. You will return to your world, and we will continue to fade into ours." The second's voice was sharper, but her eyes softened when they met his. "Or you can stay. The bond will complete. You will no longer be only human, and we will no longer be only of our kind. Together we will become something new." The youngest reached out, her hand brushing his fingers gently. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "If you choose us, you will never walk alone again." His breath caught. He looked at their faces, each so different yet connected to him now in a way that went deeper than blood. He could feel their hearts through the bond, their hope, their fear, their quiet longing. The queen's voice filled the hall again. "This choice is not for one night. It is for life. There is no path back once you step forward." The human closed his eyes, his thoughts a storm. On Earth, he had always been alone in some way, even in a crowd. Here, on this strange world, with these strange beings, he felt something he hadn't in years, belonging. He opened his eyes, looking at the daughters. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," he whispered. The eldest's voice was steady. "The bond doesn't need you to be strong. It needs you to be true." The second leaned closer, her golden eyes locking on his. "You've already proven your heart." "That is enough." The youngest squeezed his hand, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We want you to choose us." Swallowed hard, his chest tightening as the weight of the decision settled fully on his shoulders. For a moment, the hall was utterly silent, the air thick with anticipation. Then, slowly he stood, his legs shaking but steadying with each step. He turned to the queen, his voice quiet but certain. "I choose to stay." The words echoed through the hall, and in that instant, the bond flared like fire. Light burst from the floor, wrapping around him and the daughters in waves of energy. He felt it sink into his bones, into his soul, binding them together in a way that could never be undone. The queen's eyes softened as she raised her hands. "So it is done," she said, voice carrying both warmth and power. "You are no longer a man who fell from the sky. You are now of the royal blood. You are of us." The daughters stepped closer, their hands finding his as the bond's glow pulsed between them like a living heartbeat. The youngest leaned her forehead against his chest, whispering softly, "You are ours now." He closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the bond flood him completely. In that moment, there was no crash, no fear, no past. There was only the choice he had made, and the life waiting ahead. For the first time since he had fallen onto this alien world, he felt at peace, not because he was safe, but because he had chosen where he belonged. The palace glowed brighter than it ever had. The bond's energy spread through every wall, every corridor, filling the air with a soft hum. The human stood at the center of the royal hall, the daughters on either side of him, their hands resting. Gently in his, the queen stepped forward slowly, her robe trailing like a river of light behind her. Her voice was calm, carrying both pride and reverence. "The bond is complete," she said softly, "and with it, a new era begins." The human's chest rose and fell with shaky breaths. He could still feel the glow inside him, like a second heartbeat pulsing with the daughter's own. It was strange, overwhelming, yet comforting. For the first time in his life, he felt like he wasn't just himself. He was part of something larger, something eternal. The doors of the hall opened, and the tribe poured in, their luminous eyes wide as they saw the glow wrapping around the four of them. A low murmur spread through the crowd, soft voices filled with awe and relief. For a species fading into the shadows of time, this moment was salvation. The eldest daughter stepped forward first, her voice calm and steady. "Through him, the bond lives again," she declared. The second's golden eyes shone as she added, "And through us our people rise." The youngest squeezed his hand gently, her voice soft and warm. "And together we are no longer alone." The crowd bowed deeply, the sound of their movement like a wave rolling through the hall. The human's throat tightened. He had never been anyone important before, never imagined his life would matter this much, and yet here he was, standing in a palace on a world he hadn't known existed weeks ago. Chosen to carry the hope of an entire race, the queen approached, placing her hand over his heart. "You were a stranger from the sky," she said softly, "but now you are our blood, our future." Her words sank deep into him. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He wasn't just a man lost in the stars. He was theirs, and they were his. The bond pulsed again, and with it came visions, fleeting images of a life not yet lived. A future built not on his old world, but this one. A family, a home, a purpose. He looked at the daughters, their luminous eyes reflecting his own. A soft smile tugged at his lips. "I thought I lost everything when I crashed here," he whispered. The youngest tilted her head, her voice gentle. "And what do you feel now?" He took a slow breath, his voice steady this time. "I think I found where I belong." The queen stepped back and raised her hands high. The hall erupted in light, the walls pulsing in celebration. The tribe let out a sound unlike any he had heard before, a song of renewal that shook the palace to its core. For the first time in centuries, their people had hope. The human stood in the center of it all, the weight of the moment settling into him like a promise. He wasn't afraid anymore, not of the bond, not of the future, not of himself. The second heartbeat in his chest pulsed stronger. No longer foreign, it was his now, and it would guide him for the rest of his life. The eldest placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice quiet but certain. "From this day, you are not just ours," she said. "You are this world's too." The second leaned closer, her golden eyes softening. "And we will never let you face it alone." The youngest rested her forehead against his chest, whispering like a vow, "This is our beginning." He looked at all of them, at the queen, at the glowing hall, and at the faces of the tribe watching with hope and love, and he smiled, not the nervous, uncertain smile of a man lost, but the quiet, sure smile of someone who had finally found his place. The queen's final words carried through the light and song. "Welcome home, human," she said, her voice soft but unshakable. "Welcome to forever." And as the bond pulsed one last time, wrapping them in its glow, he knew she was right. This wasn't just the end of his story. It was the beginning of something far greater.